Good morning and happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You know that I do this part as part, because you're right, Donna Sue, we need joy in our hearts. And so I do this part that I call it laughter is the best medicine, because sometimes, we just think things are pretty tough. And so we got to help ourselves out a little bit and just maybe laugh now and then, and at ourselves even sometimes. So what brought to mind this particular, I found this because, we went bowling this week with Nancy and Brian and my wife and I, and we hadn't bowled in I want to say 25, 30 years or something. And I finally got over there, and I had to call Nancy and say, Nancy, what time again? Because I didn't really write that down. So she had to tell me. So here's the humor today. See, there was an elderly couple that was having memory problems, and they were advised by their doctor to make notes to help them remember things. And one evening while watching television, the wife asked her husband to go get her a bowl of ice cream. Sure, no problem, says the husband. And she says, write it down. And the husband says, I don't need to write it down. I can remember that. That's not a problem. And she says, I also want strawberries and whipped cream. She says, write it down. I don't need to write it down. I can remember this. Fine. So after a short while, the husband comes back out of the kitchen. He's got a plate of bacon and some eggs over easy. Now the wife is indignant, and she snaps at him. I told you to write it down. I wanted scrambled eggs. Anyway, everybody has little issues like that sometimes. When I was contemplating what to talk about this week, what came to my mind is, what is the most basic thing there is in spirituality, really? And the answer came to me was, simplify the message. How many of you are familiar with Meister Eckhart? Yeah, a lot of people. Meister Eckhart lived 1260 to 1328, and obviously was not a Unity student, but we Unity students quote him quite a bit. And I don't know if you have a favorite Meister Eckhart quote. He has very many. He truly was a profound Christian mystic. And there's two ways you can tell this. One, obviously, was what he wrote, and the second was that he was reprimanded by the Vatican. And when you get reprimanded by the Vatican for your ideas now, okay, you're on the right track. And you're also in good company. You've got Galileo, you got Pierre Teilhard, and many others. Now, I have several Meister Eckhart quotes that I really like. I'm going to share two of them with you today. The very first one sounds very Unity, and it's because it expresses how we believe the process of manifestation works. And this is what he says. When the soul wants to express something, she throws an image out in front of her and then steps into it. Yeah, right? I heard that, yeah. That's an awesome thing for a Catholic bishop to say 700 plus years ago. I mean, I don't think we have a Catholic bishop anywhere right now that would say that, as far as I know it. And some of us come from that Catholic background. I think it's a wonderful quote, and you can visualize it as well, just stepping right into it. Because that's right in track with what we say how things work. We say that everything in the manifest world has its origin in thought. And, Genesis begins that way. First, there was the Word. The Word is consciousness. That's what the Word really, really is. And consciousness projects images out into the world and then steps into it, just like he says. And I also think it's interesting that he references the soul as a she. That's a very interesting thing, Meister Eckhart. Now, I think that if the soul had a gender, it would be a she. And now, do I think that soul has a gender? Probably not, but I do think maybe, perhaps, it has a gender tendency. I consider that idea. And thus we choose to manifest as a male or a female because at any given time, maybe there's things that we need to work out, and so we want to express ourselves one way or the other. It's a thought. In any case, generally speaking, it certainly seems that that the ones that are more advanced spiritually on this planet are the females. I'm sorry to tell you guys, really. No, I am. And how can I say that? Why would I say that? Look around. Just look around. Now, from my personal experience in Unity for the last almost 20 years now, I've noticed that everywhere that I go, there's always many more females than males. All the times, whether it be the congregation or a study group or the minister program, it goes on. Now I've joined a dinner club, and same thing. Mostly women. So this is particularly sad for the Catholic Church and others, because there's a shortage of priests, as we all know, and so they're eliminating half of the population, right off the bat, and perhaps I could argue that the better half of the population. And then on top of that, they're eliminating the LGBTQ community as well. So they really narrow it down to the candidates. And this is what I'm talking about in the talk today. Simplify the message. I can tell you why the Catholic Church will not allow that, but it doesn't matter. It's just man-made rules. Leave it at that. Bottom line, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. And the energy on the earth has really been out of balance for a very, very long time because the men have been running the show. And I think it's time that we turn that around. I think it's time that the females take over the energy of the planet. And I think that's happening. It's happening here in Unity because we're an example of it. I mean, look at our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Charles was definitely very heady in his approach to things. He changed later on, but Myrtle was the one that was very heart-centered, extremely heart-centered. But together, they created a wonderful new balanced way of seeing spirituality, combining the head and the heart, our thoughts and our feelings. So balance is a really good thing. And I don't want to get down too much on the guys. I mean, it is Father's Day, right? I need to lighten up a little bit. But so let me share with you a second Meister Eckhart quote that addresses simplify the message. He says, God is not a question of addition. God is a question of subtraction. How does that resonate with you? I was talking to Tara about that. Does that sound right to you? And what does it even mean? Let me tell you what I hear in that statement. Two things. First is that the idea of, and maybe you've heard this analogy, about peeling away layers of junk that we have accumulated to get to our really core. That's one thing. And the other one is, and for that one is because to get to who we already are. Because we're seeking that which we already are. Because we've covered it up with piles of stuff. And the other thought that comes to my mind, as far as simplifying the message, is get out of the way. We're in our own way. And it's certainly not talking about creating a superstructure of rules and saying that there's only one God, but then having this is your God and their God and the Jews' God and the Muslim God, and it's only one God. It's about seeing things as one, everything as one. The Transcendentalists reminded us that God is in everything and in everyone. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, the highest revelation is that God is in every man. And by man, that's 1800 language. He meant mankind, people. And so the Master Jesus also exemplified and simplified the message when he was tested by the Pharisees, and they asked him, which of the 613 commandments is the greatest commandment? And his response was this. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and all the prophets hang on these two commandments. 613 commandments. And he narrowed it down to really one: love. Jesus was a master teacher. And here he made it clear that life is not complicated. We have to get down to just one thing, and that is love. His response is, once as wonderful as it is, comes from a particular group, the Hebrew people. There's another equally wonderful approach to this that comes from all around the world. And I've seen a poster, and I'd like to get one that has them all on it. And because it comes from every spiritual path that we know of, all of them. And we refer to this as the golden rule. They all say it. He says, simply do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Talk about simplifying the message. If we could all just do that one thing, wouldn't this world be different? Is it really that hard? Wow. There is one more example of simplify the message I want to share with you today. And it is the Unity New Thought version of simplify the Christian message. Now, I came to Unity from a Christian background, a Catholic background, and I immediately was attracted to the idea of trying to reconcile these two things right away. Because for me, growing up as a Catholic, I always felt something is right, but something doesn't seem right. Something is wrong about it. And early on, I learned the distinction, and perhaps I've mentioned it before. Let me say it again. It turns out the difference is between the life of Jesus and the life about Jesus. What does that mean? It means that early in the Christian movement, one of the directions that this all could have gone was to follow the simple life of Jesus, which was love, healing, forgiveness. The second was about the story that was created about Jesus, mostly at the hands of the Apostle Paul. Now, to credit Paul, the truth is, if Paul had not, he was the biggest proponent of Christianity early on. And if he had not done so, most likely Christianity would have fallen off the wayside and would have not existed, just like many other Jewish sects at the time. But for the discredit of Paul, Paul never met Jesus, never met him. Paul was an apocalyptic Jew. The message he promoted was the message that he believed in as an apocalyptic Jew. And so it was all based on a self-claimed vision of Jesus. As I said, he never met him. Paul rarely talks about Jesus and his teachings. Paul talks about what Paul believes. That's his biggest message. And so ultimately what happened was that the Christian message that won out was the message of Paul and not the life of Jesus. And that's mostly what we get. And it's a message of exclusivity. You must do things a certain way or else it's not going to work out very well for you. And that's the part that I could never just kind of, latch onto. I just couldn't. Unity when I came to Unity, they told me that it was an expression of a return to the simple life of Jesus. I said, I can do that. Alan Anderson, he wrote a book called New Thought, A Practical American Spirituality. And he summarizes what I've been talking about as this. He says, New Thought is what all Christianity could have become if it had been able to avoid the stultifying tendencies needed to become a religion capable of competing with other outlooks for the official title of the Roman Empire. It is what all Christianity could have become if it had been allowed the freedom of belief, concentrating on the loving, healing example of Jesus, rather than developing a rigid superstructure of the teachings of Jesus. That pretty much wraps it up. We went the wrong direction. So there you have it. Christianity could have become unity. But it didn't, because Paul took it a different direction about this I don't know if you all know. How many are familiar with the word apocalyptic? Are you at all? Yes, a few of you are, yeah. It's basically that end time thing. So what happened was when the fall from grace, let's start with that. When that happened, then evil came into the world, and evil now is in charge of the world, and thus we see all this stuff that's going on. But there will come a time where God will say, enough of that. I'm stepping in. We're going to fight the evil forces, and we're going to win, and we're going to set up a new kingdom. That story, which we're all very familiar with, is apocalypticism. That's what it's called. Now, I remember because I was telling somebody the other day that when I first started going to Unity, I was still going back to Catholic Church, and I was the music minister for the high school kids, and I was directing the choir. And I started listening to it, and it's very clear. It says, I await the resurrection of the world and the life of the world to come, amen, and, in the creed. So it's an expectation. And what do we say? No. Everything's in the present. Everything's right here and now. So it's a very different message. And all the Gospels tell us a different version of Jesus. And even that sounds complicated. But, Jesus said one time, they asked him a question. He says, when will the harvest come? It's coming in 4 months. And he said, 4 months? I tell you, he said, open your eyes and look around. The fields are ripe for harvest. So that's a reference to everything is here right now, all the time. And in Luke, he talks about neither say about the kingdom coming. He says, neither say lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Now, when I looked at that verse again, and I listened to a couple of interpretations, one of them says, oh, that's a mistranslation. It really means, it should be really, the kingdom of heaven is among you. Because he was trying to say, here's Jesus. The kingdom of heaven has begun. It is among you. Well, that's a whole different take on what it says. It says within you. So I don't know. Here's what I'm trying to say. Let me wrap up this simplifying the message thing. There are many inconsistencies in the Bible and in the interpretation of the Bible, and largely depending on how you see things. And that holds true for unity as well, depending on how we see things. Did the writers really intend us to see it metaphysically? I don't know. Probably not. But that's how we see it. Does it make it right or wrong? Not really. Remember that Rumi quote? Beyond good and evil there is a field. I will meet you there. Because it's talking about not how it is, but how we are. And I said that before. We are looking through our lenses. Remember I talked, our perception, our reality. I keep going back to that one thing. And so, strange as it sounds, there is no right and wrong. And we assign things. And a couple of weeks ago, I talked about that British neuroscientist, whatever it is. He said the same thing, that all the qualities of the universe, remember when I said that, are all assigned by us. We give it the color. We give it the sound. We give it all these things. It's very strange, but it tells us that we are the masters of our faith, the captains of our ship. But in the end, I think we have within us, that's the simplifying the message, we have within us all that we need. It's there already. Plato said that knowledge is recollection. That's interesting, Plato. In other words, we have everything that we need. So we need to return to our hearts and Scripture calls it the still small voice. When all is said is done, that is the best source of knowing the truth. Listening. So we have to stop. That's why we meditate. We got to stop and just listen and make a connection with that inner divinity that we have. And it'll come to you. I want to leave you with this thought from a book called Inner Peace for Busy People. Because it really helped me to, again, growing up Catholic, I really had a lot of problems with faith. I did. Because I was being told to believe something that I knew good and well was just not true. It could, or at least not true for me. And I said, I can't believe that. And he said, but it's faith. I said, well, if that's faith, then I can't handle it. I can't. But this is talk about peeling away the layers. And when I read this, I said, now I can hang on to faith. Because the lady says this, in the end, faith is less a set of beliefs than your willingness to surrender to a mysterious force of love and guidance that helps you find your way. Let me say that again. In the end, faith is less a set of beliefs than your willingness to surrender to a mysterious force of love and guidance that helps you find your way. That's simplifying the message. Happy Father's Day. Have a blessed week.